Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and we connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. For business partners, an operating agreement is one of the most important documents they will ever sign. If you or someone close to you is a business owner entering or updating a partnership, stay tuned. This episode is definitely for you. Our topic today, the three questions business partners should ask before signing an operating agreement. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoy this episode of the Three Questions Podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. For business partners, especially high net worth owners scaling their companies, the operating agreement is essentially a prenup for their business. It defines how decisions are made, how profits and losses are shared, and what happens if someone wants out, and how the company survives a major life event like death, divorce, or incapacity. Without clear, thoughtful provisions, even the strongest partnership can unravel, and that could lead to costly disputes, loss of time, and damaged wealth. Today, we're going to explore the three questions business partners should ask before signing an operating agreement. And joining the podcast today is Jessica Portalatin. She is the founder of Miami, Florida-based Portalatin Business Law Firm. She is an innovative business attorney, and she specializes in corporate, trademark, and contract law. And she's recognized as a super lawyer, rising star for multiple years. And she works with high growth domestic and international businesses, helping them structure operations, protect intellectual property, and create clear governance documents that support long-term success. Jessica, we finally made this happen.
Yes, Wayne, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so
From
excited.
from from having coffee, was that in Plantation? Was that we had coffee one
Pembroke
afternoon?
Pines.
Pardon me?
Pembroke Pines.
Pembroke Pines. We had coffee one Friday afternoon. We were brainstorming about this, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeehaw.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
so
Well,
excited.
thank you for making time for us today, and I'm looking forward to this. And just a note that I mentioned in the introduction about how you work with international clients, and in fact, you have
Yeah.
introduced me to Canadians that are
Yeah. I work with a ton of Canadians.
yeah, yeah, and so this is perfect. So for the folks who are listening in, this isn't just for U.S. business. This could be for a Canadian entrepreneur who's looking to establish a business in South Florida.
Absolutely. Yeah, we,
Absolutely.
we we work with operating agreements all the time with foreigners, and sometimes it's so different for them. So it's nice to
Oh yeah.
have someone that could explain
The,
this to them.
the complexity of a relocation, I'll say this from cross-border financial
Mhm.
advisor, and again, my specialty is most people know is helping Canadians relocate to the U.S. or American residents moving to Canada. Is that relocation across the border? There's levels of complexity at every turn.
Yeah.
Immigration, tax planning, wealth management itself, estate planning, risk management, business formation. It's
Yeah.
all very different. All
I
right,
always say it's already scary for an entrepreneur to open a business. Now
period.
imagine
End of
opening it.
story.
Yeah, and imagine opening it in a new home where you don't know the rules, right? So like our motto is like we help you feel that you have peace of mind when you're opening a business in a new home because
So
that's really what you're doing.
yeah, and you nailed the head on the hammer on the nail there in that this whole idea of relocation. And again, I know we're talking about operating, but just this whole idea of
Mhm.
relocating, it's a lot different to relocate, say, from Florida, I don't know, to Texas or from
Mhm.
California to Florida. That's one thing. But relocating from one country to a different country, that's even another layer of complexity. So having your expertise in multiple fields is going to be a huge benefit. And again, that's why we're having you on the podcast. So we got a whole bunch of questions I want to get to, but before we do that, I just want to pick your brain here for a little bit. So, what trends or challenges have you seen most business owners encounter when they're putting an operating agreement in place? Like what has come up as a result of this idea that we got to put something in place that we agree on?
Yeah.
What does that what does that uncover? What usually
Uh, I mean, trends that they push it to the back burner. No.
behaviors maybe that's a
Yeah, I
better.
mean, I think there's a lot of use now of AI, which I think can be helpful and it can be very dangerous in any area, right? If you don't know really what you're you're doing, it can be very dangerous and you can feel a false sense of security and safety when it's not really there, the protection, right? I would say challenges that we see is getting my clients to believe that the scenarios that we're discussing can and will happen. Sometimes they struggle with that because they're excited, they're opening a business with their friend, their family member, their spouse. And so they can't imagine or put in their mind that something can go wrong to these levels, right? And so getting them to believe that and getting them to really think through, okay, what happens if XYZ happens? And not just put something on paper, really go through the scenario and say, this is what I want it to look like if that happens. And it's also getting over the fact of feeling weird about putting a contract when you're with a friend or a spouse. What
Hmm.
I tell them is if you care about the relationship, you put it on paper because when things happen, because they will, it's business, it helps the chaos and the emotions go down when you already have like a preset of rules and procedures that both of you or all of you have decided on. So I would say those are the challenges that we go through.
In the wealth management space, this is kind of my happy place, right? One of the things that we frequently caution well-intentioned do-it-yourselfers is again, that do-it-yourselfer mentality. And you kind of talked about with the AI, you
Yeah.
know, how often are you called in after the fact when business
Yeah.
partners are drafting an operating agreement and that has led to some, I'll call them unwanted, unintended consequences? So they've done something, they put together, and it was like, and all of a sudden they realize that they've created more havoc than they obviously intended.
Yeah, we actually just had a recent situation with this. So we were helping, it was a business that had two partners. We were representing one of the partners that was buying out the other. And of course, as part of the buyout process, we had to review the operating agreement in order to see what procedures it had in place. And it was a hot mess, Wayne. Like when I tell you there was a board when there didn't need to be a board, it said three board members required. There's like two. It was a mess. And the way that it was written actually made it more complicated for the client than it needed to be, the buyout process, which made it more expensive for them. And then in addition to that, they had to rewrite the whole thing all over anyways because it was just useless. So in an attempt to save money, they actually made the process more expensive for themselves, both during the purchase of that interest and then having to rewrite the operating agreement. So, when I was taking the Florida bar, I had a gentleman that told me, he's like, do it right, do it once, and
Measure
that's
twice, cut once, I think is the if you're a carpenter, right?
you
Measure
know, and
twice,
so
cut once.
yeah, and so if you want to do it right and not have to do it over and over, just do it right from the beginning. And so yes, that was one of the scenarios that we had recently. I think it was like about 2 weeks ago.
I just saw something just this minute.
What's up?
So I had a conversation earlier last week. Was it last week? Yeah, last week. Client of mine, great client. We get along really super well. And he's got a lot of stuff going on. And there is multiple layers of complexity here with this particular individual. He's got renegotiating an alimony and an updated estate plan.
Mm-hmm.
Those are completely two separate things. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Family law, estate planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was saying, well, I'm just going to get my lawyer that's doing my family law negotiating to update my trust. And I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's stop right there. Let's not do that. Let's have the family law attorney do the family law stuff. And let's get the estate planning attorney I referred to you to do your estate planning stuff. So I wonder how often you get a situation where somebody comes to you and they tell you, well, we just had our fill in the blank attorney do this because they were already there. We already hired them. And we have them put together this operating agreement. Do you ever see anything like that happen? That's, I guess, almost as worse as a similar to do it yourselfer of having somebody who is an attorney who basically, well, they're a lawyer.
I would say it's the same as having chest pain and going to a podiatrist, right? It's like they're both doctors,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
So it's like saying, well, they're lawyers. It's the specialty, the experience that comes with each area. Look, I love what I do and I do it really well, but I stick to what I do.
No, you're
And
like I always say, I'm not an estate planning attorney, and I don't play one on TV.
yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
And I stayed in my lane because there's so many nuances within each area of law that people would be amazed, right? And so what I like to do is I like to be the quarterback for my business owner clients. So they come in, they say, "Look, I have all this situation," right? It's like, "Okay, let's start here." And oh, you need help with, you want to own this with a trust? I have an estate planning attorney for you. Hold on, let's bring him in and
Yes.
we start forming your team because all these areas are touched. You said that they're so separate. In reality, they're not. These are questions that I ask when they come in. I have to ask, are you married, right? What's the situation? Do you have a trust? Those are questions that we need to know in order to make sure that all the pieces are in play because there's a lot of moving parts. So I like to be the quarterback and say, we do need to bring this person in. We do need to, you do need to be advised on this. And so that way they're getting the full picture because I know enough to be dangerous, obviously, but in all the areas, there's so much nuance. And I mean, there was a situation with where I connected you with one of my clients, right? And it's just like you need to talk to Wayne. I that's not my specialty, and so that's the dynamic that I like to have with my clients.
What have you discovered surprises most people when they begin working with their partners on an operating agreement? I think to myself when I get into when you think of that is that they find out they don't have as much in common as they thought they did. But that's me thinking. I'm interested what your perspective is. What's talk when you're starting to work with two partners, and what raises the Spockian eyebrow for those for your clients when they get into this process?
Yeah. What you just mentioned, that they don't have that much in common in the goals, that happens a lot when you do business plans.
Yeah,
You start,
exactly. They think they
you
have all
start,
these things in common, and they find out that maybe not so
yeah.
much.
Yeah, one wants to have a more relaxing life, and the other, wants quality of life, and the other one wants to hustle and be a millionaire in the next 5 years. Very different, right? But anyway, back to the question that you asked. I think that them seeing all the possibilities that can come up with a partnership, good and bad, right? So, um, when we do an operating agreement, we have this process that we do that we go through a questionnaire with them to discuss different scenarios. So, what do you want to happen if your partner dies or if you die? What do you want to happen if you both get in a car accident and can't make decisions for the firm? Who's making that decision? What happened? And good, let's do some good scenarios. What if you grow to be this huge company and someone wants to buy you out, you're 50-50 partners, and you want to sell and your partner doesn't? So, how do you want to handle these things? And so, you'd be surprised how when we start going through these questions, you're like, oh my goodness, there's so many endless scenarios that we've never even thought about. And those are
Right.
the most common ones that are gonna happen, right? Like someone's gonna die. Not to sound morbid, but it's just gonna happen. There's gonna be an exit somehow.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what surprises them, all the things that
Interesting.
they never even thought of to think of.
Yeah, well, that's great context. Thank you for getting it. And yeah, you know what? Let's get to our questions. We've been talking
Let's
here.
do
Let's
it.
get to the three questions business owners, business partners should ask before signing an operating agreement. Okay, Jessica, let's start with question number one. Here we go. My business partner and I are in the process of establishing a new operating agreement. One of our concerns is what happens if one of us dies prematurely. We are just talking about that.
Right.
Neither of us wants to involve the other partner's spouse in the business. How do we address this? This is right in your wheelhouse. Take it away.
Yeah. The most popular way to address this issue is a buy-sell agreement. A buy-sell agreement is an arrangement. Let's say there's two partners, just for simplicity purposes,
Hmm.
and one partner buys life insurance on the other partner buys life insurance on the other, and so they each have life insurance. And if one of them passes away, that life insurance is used to purchase that membership interest, right? So that way they
Hmm.
have liquidity. Um, that's the most popular way to do it. What I see happens a lot is a lot of people do this wonderful agreement that says this is what we're going to do, and they never buy the life insurance.
Yeah.
And so
I have a
I've seen it
client up in New
happen.
York. I have a client literally in New York right now that we're going through this
Yeah.
process. I'm not even kidding, for sure. I hope
Yeah.
he's
But
listening.
what
And I hope he's either watching or listening to this episode because we're going through this right now. Interesting.
Yeah. So we bring on the financial advisor. If they don't have someone immediately, we bring them on because we want them to be completely covered. Because if not, they're just going to have a beautifully drafted agreement that has no force.
Yeah,
Um,
it's an empty
so
suit.
yeah, so that's one of the most popular ways of doing it. Another way of doing it is, if they're ineligible, let's say because of age or because
Yeah,
of sickness
health or
for life
whatever. Yeah, they can't
insurance.
get the coverage.
Right. So in the operating agreement, what we do is we do a right of first purchase where, if one of them passes away, the surviving partner has the right to purchase within a certain amount of time from the estate or from the heir. And then from there, obviously, because they don't have all the liquidity from proceeds of a life insurance, we like to include a payment plan to give them that flexibility in order to pay and not become completely, illiquid. So those are two options that can happen or can occur if you don't want the spouse or whomever the heir is on your partner's side,
Running,
partner.
becoming a business partner, and
Yeah.
which is the perfect segue because I was thinking as you were talking, there's got to be some tax and estate planning implications here. And
Yeah.
remember we talked earlier about putting in the needing to bring in an estate planning attorney and all this. So there's got to be some implications here
Yeah.
along those lines. And how do you bring that into the conversation?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's tons. Like I said, I connect them right away so that they know that they have to talk to this professional and we can get on the same page before we wrap up the project. But like just a simple example, even with buy sells. So the cross purchase, which is what we just discussed, where they buy one
Right.
life insurance on the other, is very popular. But there's another setup, which is where the LLC actually owns the policies on the different members. That's more popular if there's multiple partners, not just two, three, four, five. And that has completely different tax consequences than a cross purchase. There was a recent case that came out, I think it was like 2023, Connolly. And so they talked about that. And when we set this up, it's fine. It may be that the LLC owning the policies is the most practical for them, but I like them to know what does the whole playing field look like, tax wise, buyout wise, everything, because everything is interconnected. And so we do bring on a tax professional at that point.
So we recently did a podcast. Actually, our good friend Mary Angelica Everado was involved. She was the guest host on that particular one, good friend of both
Mhm.
of ours.
Yeah.
We did a podcast on integrating wealth management with business growth strategies. And one of the points that we covered was that business owners ought to recognize that wealth management isn't a separate silo, right? Wealth
Yeah.
management takes into consideration tax planning, estate planning, investing, risk management, right? All of those things. It's a multiplier of business growth. So establishing the team, you talked about it earlier, having on your team uh, a business development specialist, a wealth manager, a tax advisor, their attorneys, hello, right?
Yeah.
Insurance specialists that
Hmm.
all basically, and they can and will and should work together. So it isn't like that. I had an issue this morning, literally with a client this morning, where they've been talking to their accountant. And I said, we cannot continue to have these siloed conversations. We need to work together collectively. Not you talk to them, then you talk to me, then it's got to be a collective effort. So if everybody knows what the client is hoping to achieve, we are going to have a much better outcome.
Absolutely. Excuse me.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
What I think that is the most common and the best way to do it, especially when there's a foreign entrepreneur coming in. So I remember there was actually a Canadian client of mine, and we were building a business. He had partners, and he was going for the E2 visa.
Very
And
familiar with that.
yeah, I know you
I'm
are.
very familiar with that one.
That I mean, those are our bread and butter. We help E2 visa applicants all the time with the corporate side. And so I remember there were several meetings where it was his immigration attorney, his tax attorney, myself, his CPA, and we were
Perfect.
all talking about what is best in the grand scheme of things because you
Right.
have to something has to give, right? So especially when you're coming in with an E2 visa, you want to tax plan as best as you can, of course. But within the reality of the business, the purpose is to get you that visa. So if there's something that conflicts with the immigration portion of it, it's even though you want it best for the tax portion, it's not going to fit. So having all the parties and all the professionals really working on it
Talking
together
at the
in the
same time,
same
not just these,
conversation.
so these
Yes, not
singular
just
convers.
emails.
Yeah.
It's just it's we're all here, we're talking it out, we're running it through. The client is hearing it and is understanding why we're having these conversations instead of reading email and email and
And
email, right?
responding, what could
Yeah.
be sorted out in a matter of a 45-minute conversation,
Yeah.
if we do it by silo, could take months, literally, without exaggerating.
And things can be missed as well, Wayne.
100%.
And I'm sure that's what happened with that client, that there was a conversation happening with the CPA. Everything wasn't being probably communicated to you.
Right.
And then there's
Well, we're
there's
just at the
there's that.
beginning of this whole phase of something that, a change in plan sort of thing. And they talked to their CPA, and I said, look, before we can, like, theoretically speaking, the recommendation, and I'm not disputing what the suggestion was in this particular case, but we have to do analysis and forecasting and look at this. It isn't just a theory. Let's see what it actually looks when you actually, as they say, crunch the numbers.
Right.
Our topic today is the 3 questions business partners should ask before signing an operating agreement. And joining me is Jessica Portalatin. She is the founder of Portalatin Business Law in Miami, Florida. Let's go on to question number 2.
Let's do
My
it.
husband and I own a property management business together. Are there any special clauses we should include in our operating agreement in the event we get divorced?
Yes and yes.
Okay, fire away.
Yeah, I would say, this is a common scenario for us as well. Again, another Canadian client came in. We
There you go.
It was a husband and wife, E2 visa, and they had this operating agreement. And I asked them, what do you want to happen if the business, if your relationship goes sour, you get a divorce? In that case, what they wanted was they wanted the children to inherit the business. They had already adult children, and that's one option, right? So, but if there are no children, a very popular option is having a buyout clause. So if someone files for divorce, one partner has the right to buy the other partner out. One case that I can remember so clearly, they just came to us once it was too late, of course. Um, they were getting divorced. The young lady was actually the owner of the business. She had put in all the work, all the money, but she added her husband as a partner for purposes of extra protection. So in Florida, single member LLCs don't provide all the protections that people want. And so sometimes what entrepreneurs do, they add their spouse to the business in order to get the most protection possible. So that's what she did. The husband did not work the business, did not put any money, nothing.
But in
And then
theory,
they get divorced.
once he is added to the business, in theory, he's a 50% owner. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
He was, because that's how they were reporting it on the taxes. She didn't have an operating agreement that said, oh, he only owns five, right? And nor did
Would
she
that have
have
been
any.
sufficient? Would that, if for what they were looking to achieve as far as the
Yeah, he's another
protection
member. Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
she could have been a 95% owner. He could have been a 5% owner, could have accomplished exactly what she wanted to, but that's not what they did.
So not only did they not do that, they didn't have a buyout clause that said, well, if we do get divorced, I get to buy your portion out and you get out
You're,
of the business that I built.
yeah.
And so unfortunately, they had this very dragged on divorce and fighting over a business that he never even put a cent or a drop of sweat in. And it was just so sad. So, yes, a buyout
Ooh.
clause is absolutely imperative when there is spouses in a
Those
business
things
together.
never happen, Jessica. These things
I
never
know.
happen. We never have to worry.
You're a romantic, aren't you,
No,
Wayne?
no, I hope people can sense the sarcasm
Sarcasm.
the
Yeah,
dripping from I
I
have one of those emails 2 weeks ago from a client that
know.
said, in the highly unlikely case of whatever. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
Karnak the Magnificent here. I'll acknowledge that, but I don't ever bet against anything ever not happening. So just one thing before we move on to the next question.
Absolutely.
How does an operating agreement address ownership management rights or a distribution of profit if there was a divorce? Like how does that all, how do you curate or craft that?
Right. So the ownership we just talked about, right? So if she would have put in there, he owns 5% and I
Okay.
own 95, it would be very clear, and that's how they filed their taxes.
Okay.
And so it would have really, if she wanted to buy him out, it would have been at a not 50% of her business, which was
Right.
very, very profitable at the time. Hence they were fighting for it. Management rights can also be included in there in the event of a divorce, and I do suggest it. So let's say they're both very active in the business. So they're both managers in the business. There could be a clause that says, well, if there is a divorce filed, then we put a third independent third party as the manager and we step back. It helps with the chaos, and
Hmm.
that's the
Hmm.
idea. The idea is at that point, people are going to want to have all their hands in in everything. And so making this decision while heads are cool and saying, yeah, it will be better that someone else makes the decisions that we both trust and we both have agreed on for management. And then profit distribution kind of remains the same. I mean, unless there's a buyout, like I mentioned earlier, that really doesn't change with divorce.
I just was thinking of this valuation, how what's a business
Oh,
worth, right? And
yeah.
like what role do valuation methods play in protecting a business during a marital, when there's a dissolution of a marriage, like because the big debate is what's the business worth, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that is a fantastic question. So it goes back to avoiding the chaos. When you okay, yeah, sure ahead, go ahead, buy me out. And then you're fighting over, well, how much are you going to buy me out
And what
for?
is and what is it worth? Well, I say
Right.
it's worth
So
5 million, and they say no, it's worth 1 million, and then
yeah,
the
what
same thing
happens
happens. This is where you get a business valuation expert brought in, typically.
Yeah, but what we do is that we include in the operating agreement what the payout price would be in different scenarios. And
Interesting.
what the method is. So there's methods where book value is better for the business because based on what kind of business it is versus appraisal or fair market value, whatever, right? So having them agree on this is the process and this is the formula that we're going to use
There's an
if one of
actual formula that they use so that you can't. Okay.
and we bring the CPA in on there. This is another situation where we say, hey, let's talk to your CPA. What do they recommend for your business? Because all the businesses don't work the same. The valuation is not the same for all of them. And so, yeah, that keeps the fighting again to a minimum because we have already decided what the formula is if you're going to buy me out.
So this is me putting my wealth management hat on here. So
Go
pardon
for
me.
it.
And again, if you're at a loss here, we're good. But when we look at the big picture, you know what I think about when people have significant wealth? One of the things I learned, especially since I've moved to the US, is asset protection strategies are so important, right? So,
Yeah.
I think about estate planning, asset protection. So when you're having these conversations, about putting this all together, what kind of how does this all tie in when you're talking to them about, well, you have this agreement, you have a dissolution agreement, how do you tie the estate and asset protection into all of this, if it's possible? Or is this, I know we have to bring in maybe somebody else in, but there is a tie-in for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So for the asset protection, it's really important for us to know what they have structured and how they have it structured. Very simple. We had a client recently. He has multiple properties and he had them all under an LLC, which, right? It sounds
Mhm.
like he did the right thing. That's what people say to do. But he was the sole owner of all those LLCs, right? And so if he was sued,
They'd all try,
they
it
would
all goes,
all be at risk, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, so we had to restructure. So part of it that where the asset planning comes in is us asking, okay, what do you have and what is your biggest concern? And for him, it was, I don't want to lose everything if I get sued. And I was like,
No
okay, so
kidding.
let's yeah, so let's look at it. And so for him, it was very eye-opening because he thought he was protected by the LLCs, and he was only protected bottom up, not from top down, right? So his property was at risk.
Yeah,
Uh,
so
re-
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. No, go ahead. You go.
yeah. With estate planning, I mean, there's a lot of ways this can go, but where we see a lot of the overlap is they want to own their business through a trust, just so that everything happens seamlessly, which is fantastic. But for example, if there is an S corporation election, right? That corporation election is very specific on who and what can own that entity. And so if it's a trust that is not approved by the IRS, you lose that election. So having that conversation with the trust attorney and saying, hey, they have an S election. Is this XYZ type of trust that is approved for the S corp, or is it not? That way we can plan as well. Okay, now it's going to be taxed this way, or it's going to be fine. It's going to keep the S corp election.
So
Does that answer your question?
yeah, 100%. And
Okay.
and I'll say this, I'll go back to the Canadian scenario again, cross-border financial advisor is these kind of structures are something that typical Canadian clients probably wouldn't even be aware of. So going back to the do-it-yourselfer method here, you could
Yeah.
really end up in a exposed, I guess would be the way I would put it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we shared this. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking of moving to the US and starting a business, you do not want to try to set this all up on your, because in theory, you could do a lot of this do-it-yourselfer level, and definitely not recommended. Okay,
Yeah.
Jessica, let's move on to our third and final question. Here we go. My
Sure.
business partner was in a car accident and is
Oh.
now incapacitated. Who can make business decisions on his behalf? His spouse or me? Over to you.
Mm, neither. So
Oh,
let's
lovely. Perfect.
let's make an assumption here. So we're talking about no operating agreement, no power of attorney, no proxy, right? Okay, so if there's none of that, technically it falls to statute, which the statute doesn't give anyone the right to vote on their behalf. So they would
The
actually have to
statute, the
probably
statute, and you say the
the
stat.
corporate statute and the LLC statute does not say, oh, well, if they get incapacitated, this is what happens. That's not something that's covered. And so
Mhm.
therefore, they would likely have to go to court, get a guardianship from the court, spend
Real
thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to do that.
and
And
time and time.
and time, right? So it depends on how serious this incapacitation is, right? Is he in
Not
a
just a
coma? And if
weekend thing and back, but we're talking if it's
right,
serious, like
serious
major.
coma. So, what should part members do so that this is avoided? Well, one of them is you can have a proxy or a power of attorney with someone that you trust and that knows the business, is knowledgeable about it. So, if they make decisions on your behalf, they're good decisions. I think you and I talked about a situation recently where one of what a client got had a mental breakdown and we called him Ned, remember? Client had a mental breakdown and his partner wanted to make decisions on his behalf, couldn't. His wife had a power of attorney, but the wife didn't know anything about the business. So she was making decisions that were actually not conducive to the business and were harming the business. And so making sure that if you're going to pick up power of attorney or a proxy for your business, that they get along with your partner and they understand the business. That's one way. The other way is including in the operating agreement that the remaining partner is going to make the business decisions. At the end of the day, you're in a
It seems
partnership.
logical. I mean,
You would
assuming
think,
you would
but it
think
depends on it depends on the
depends
business.
on the role plays. I get that because some businesses have very specific skill sets, and you may not want the person who's the salesperson making administrative or I get it, but
Or they can have different interests. So let me give you an example. Working on this right now, I'm telling you, there's so many different ways that these things can go. Um, Two partners of a corporation own a commercial real estate property that they rent. One of them wants to sell, the other one does not want to sell, so they just continue to rent it. However, if one of them gets incapacitated, right? The fear is, well, if they have my voting rights, they'll just sell. And when I wake up, I'm not going to have a property. So those types of dynamics that it's not really like a business where they're doing stuff. It's a little bit more passive because it's renting commercial property. They may not want to give the other person power. They may want to keep that on their side to avoid things like that of selling the property, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, and you basically just sort of I think you addressed my I had another question, and I think you answered it. But the idea, okay, they actually have done their homework, and they do have a power of attorney. And everybody
Uh-huh.
understands, like whether you're in the state of Florida, state of California, Texas, name the state, name the province in Canada.
Hmm.
Powers of attorney are so important as a part of an overall estate plan.
Yeah.
So like when you're creating the operating agreement, if you have a powers of attorney in place, it can actually be dovetailed. They can complement each other. Is that correct? Am I right to say that may like
If it's
you
drafted.
could have a power of attorney document in your estate plan that acknowledges the existence of the business and operating agreement. Am I right to assume that? Can they
Yes,
can they
it,
complement each other?
they can and they can conflict as well.
Okay.
So you want to make sure, one, that the power of attorney is giving you explicit right to make decisions in the business because power of attorneys can be very general or they can be very specific. So
Right.
something like that, if it's for a specific business, you want to make sure that it says can vote on this business or just have a proxy along in the actual records of that business. But you want to also make sure that in the operating agreement, there's not something that says, well, my partner gets to make that decision. So now you have a power of attorney that conflicts with the operating agreement.
So
The
what we're
operating
ba
agreement will win in that
so
case.
so what we're basically saying is that it wouldn't be shocking that when you're updating your operating agreement, that you also have to update your estate planning documents.
Oh, all the time. All
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
all the time. It
Oh,
happens a lot too with when you want, let's say there's not going to be a right of first purchase and you want it to be transferred to an heir, you have to update that and also ideally update that in your operating agreement so you don't have to go to probate or do anything of that sort. It's just very clear. Make sure that they're compatible and not conflicting.
so we've covered a ton today. I told you this
Yeah.
would be fun.
Yeah.
What's one practical step a business partners, we'll include both of them, not just one. What's one practical step business partners should take right now before
Mhm.
finalizing their operating agreement? There must be like one thing you would suggest.
I would say go through these big scenarios, right? Death, incapacity, buyout. Just talk about it, and in addition to bring on these specialists. If you know, bring on your trust attorney, bring on your tax advisor, have them all on the call and say, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for. Am I protected the way I want to be? This is my goal. Am I on the road to that goal?" So bring them together. Most professionals are not just willing, but happy to collaborate with other specialists. So if you have one that doesn't want to, that's a red flag. So I would
Mhm.
say that would be my main recommendation. Go ahead and get all these
Get
specialists
the
in their
team
area.
together. Get all the
Get
brain.
the team together.
Get
Exactly.
all the brainiacs in the room at the same time, right?
All the nerds, all of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. So folks listening in right now, who want to make sure their operating agreement aligns with their broader wealth management, estate planning, capital forecasting strategy, which of course we do. What is the best next step they should take after they basically done what you said? What is there a next step in all of this and the planning process?
After they've signed an operating agreement?
Right after they've gone ahead and they've had this initial conversation, they want to make sure this operating agreement aligns with their overall wealth management plan, their estate plan, the way we do capital forecasting and analysis, like which is something we do here, right? Like, is there anything they should be doing next after they've got this all in place? Is there any next steps you'd recommend?
Yeah, like I said, having a meeting with all those professionals to make sure that everyone is on the same page before you sign an operating agreement. Because
Okay.
yes, you can change the operating agreement, but at that point, everyone has to agree to change it.
So it really
And
is the collaboration. At the end of the
it's
day, I
the
may have asked,
collaboration.
I may have asked the same question twice, so shame on me. But it's basically it's the collaboration amongst the professionals. This is super, super important.
Yeah, and not putting it on the back burner, really getting it done. I can't tell you how
There you
many.
go. There you go, right there. Not put it to avoid procrastination.
Yeah, we
Bing.
really follow up with our clients to make sure that they sign it, send us a copy, and if not, we're kind of on their butt about it because we don't want there to be a situation where they haven't signed and then something comes up and you know
Yeah,
it
right.
was it was for
Exactly
nothing.
right. All right. So now we have recorded this episode. It's on video. And we actually are putting all of your information, your name, all your contact information is right underneath you on the screen here. But we have a lot of folks that will listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or they're, out and about in their cars, driving, walking, whatever. For those folks that are just listening now and going, I'd like to get a hold of her, what is the best way for them to do it? How can I get a hold of Jessica?
Sure. You can call the office, 305-702-0195, or shoot me an email. I'm great on email, jessica@contractlawmiami.com.
Perfect.
We have a bunch of a YouTube channel as well with a bunch of videos for them to get context and kind of see
We'll be
other things
adding
that
this
we're
one to it,
doing.
hopefully.
Yes, yes, yes. So yes, they can call the office or reach out to me personally.
Perfect, perfect. Jessica, I want to thank you. This was fun. And, we've opened a bit of a Pandora's box here. I can see, if you're open to it anyway, I could see multiple podcast conversations that we could have here and a whole bunch of different things. So
I would love to be back, Wayne.
that'd be great. Well, Jessica, thank you very much today. Great to see you, and I look forward to seeing you in a not too distant future. Jessica Portalatin is the founder of Portalatin Business Law Firm in beautiful Miami, Florida. She works with high growth domestic and international businesses, and she helps them structure operations, protect intellectual property. That's a topic right there, and create clear governance documents that support long-term success. Jessica, we will see you soon. Thank you.
Bye, Wayne.
I look forward to bringing you the Three Questions podcast. I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channel. And to receive a notification of when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Last but not least, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we will see you soon.